Ever since we first saw that helicopter transform into Blackout in Michael Bay's Transformers, Optimus, Megatron, and the gang have never strayed too far from the limelight. Since 2007, if you can believe it, there have been 8 films, countless video games, and enough toys sold that moms and dads will be tripping over the plastic for decades to come. The giant robots that turn into trucks and back into robots are a cultural mainstay that appeal to children and adults alike. And when they get it right, dude, it's fun as hell. I love Transformers for what it is. Despite its titular preoccupation with radical state change, Transformers is a franchise that, more often than not, has failed to transform into something truly befitting of its incredibly fun premise. The idea that interplanetary robots waging a war of cosmic stakes, good versus evil, but living among us in consumer-grade machinery is pretty undeniable. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting things you can do with that premise. Don't get me wrong, there are some great entries in the franchise. The first film, for example, is an excellent Spielbergian boy and his car story that blooms into an era-defining VFX spectacle. And you know what? Transformers 3 is great. Transformers 4, I have a soft spot for. Transformers The Last Night is one of the worst movies I've ever seen, but you know, you can't win them all. And then even further down the line, Bumblebee managed to rein things in after a period of unwieldy excess for an even more intimate and surprisingly emotional Amblin-esque coming-of-age tale. Quality aside, I will always be there for Transformers. I'm always eager to see what these robots are up to. But it should be noted that for every sturdy entry, there's the bloat of, again, The Last Night or the weird Rise of the Beasts film that just, I don't know what the hell they were doing there. It's something that prioritizes VFX bravura over compelling characters and engaging storylines. There are sights to behold, Maximals, Anthony Hopkins doing God knows what.
Idiot! Hello there!
And that really fucking annoying robot Cogman over there.
Look.
But there's little to hold on to outside of that nonsense. At their best, these films are a reliable 4-door sedan. And you know what? That's great. We all need that sometimes. They get you where you want to go, but wouldn't it be cool if that sedan's gears started to whir as it folded in on itself before emerging a bipedal mechanical warrior that kicks fucking ass? Well, I've got great news for you. Transformers 1 is that film. It's the best Transformers film, period. And the highest the series has soared since Bumblebee. And I'm not the only one who thinks so. I mean, look, I was maybe considering doing a video on this film, but it wasn't until this guy, Transformers hype guy, started just going to town marketing this film because the studio failed to do so and really just earnestly getting people excited about what's genuinely a very good movie. I mean, I had to make this video solely to shout this guy out among, a bunch of different things, but if nothing else, man, Transformers hype guy is the man. You're probably the reason we're gonna get a sequel to this movie, despite a relatively lukewarm box office up top, thanks to piss poor marketing with some of the worst trailers. I mean, genuinely, some of the stupidest trailers I've seen in a minute. But, the strong reviews from critics and then this incredibly persistent word of mouth, like, it's just cool to see this movie become what it's become because of this grassroots movement, because of someone like Transformers hype guy. I mean, God, I'm just gonna shout him out. I'm gonna keep shouting him out because he's the reason you're getting this video and he's the reason that we're gonna get a Transformers sequel. The moral of the story is, I hope Paramount is paying this guy what he deserves because, good Lord, he's doing everything and then some. The early marketing for the film suggested a relatively stock quip-led kiddie riff on a beloved IP, and the trailers made me think we were in for a dud, but I've never been happier to be wrong. You may recall from my review of Transformers Rise of the Beast that I likened Bumblebee to X-Men First Class in its back-to-basics reinvention of an IP we know and love. I likened the Transformers franchise to the X-Men franchise, and while that remains true of Bumblebee, it is even more true of Transformers 1. If you love this franchise, you need to see this film because you're going to want more. Transformers 1 represents the first time since the repopularization of the franchise in the mid-early 2000s that the focus has been shifted from pure action spectacle, often relegating the emotional beats exclusively to the human characters, to a story that seeks to understand who Megatron and Optimus Prime were before they became the battle-hardened bots we've seen depicted in countless media. Does this sound a little silly? Sure, but fortunately, the film is helmed by an excellent filmmaker whose career began at a studio that knows how to alchemize silliness into pure heart. Pixar. Josh Cooley, who previously directed Toy Story 4, a film that I loved entirely too much. Like, it's probably my favorite Toy Story, and co-wrote Inside Out, is uniquely equipped to find a new way into material that had begun to feel tired. He wants to deliver the spectacle and thrills associated with the franchise, never shortchanging the Saturday morning cartoon spirit that animates the best of its films, but he first wants to earn these pleasures by investing the audience, first and foremost, in its characters. With Transformers 1, you'll find yourself unexpectedly engaging in the thoughts and feelings of robots who were often treated as action figures or dimensionless archetypes. While the decade of Michael Bay Transformers films used the collision of machinery as a spectacular backdrop for stock human drama, Josh Cooley is much more interested in what's under the hood. With Transformers 1, for arguably the first time in franchise history, there's more than meets the eye. Speaking of more than meets the eye, FilmSpeak viewers at first glance may seem like just a bunch of handsome film geniuses, but I know you're also secretly hungry to learn even more, and you can do that in an easy and palatable way with this video sponsor, Brilliant. You know them, you love them, they've been a great sponsor on this channel before. It's for good reason, because I genuinely love them. They're one of my favorite platforms out there, specifically for learning new skills, because it's designed to be uniquely effective for each individual that uses it. Brilliant might not have a course on how to fold up into a Dodge Charger, but they have recently launched a ton of equally as valuable and fun courses on collecting data, all of which use real-world data to train you to see trends and make better informed decisions, which is what we want at the end of the day. This content is perfect for learners of any level to start or continue learning data analysis with a fully built-out suite of new content from Bayes' theorem to multiple linear regression. Learn how to parse and visualize massive data sets to make them easier to interpret. Gain insights by working with real data sets from sources like Starbucks, Twitter, Spotify, and more. And if all of this sounds like sophisticated scientific speak, like, for example, the physics that govern advanced transforming machines, don't worry. Brilliant's courses are simple, straightforward, and always easy to understand. Each course welcomes learners at every level and teaches you the specified skill set in a way that's both engaging and interactive to help you learn the things you actually want to learn. Brilliant helps you build an understanding of the material from the ground up by closing every lesson with a hands-on problem to solve. It helps you not only to learn, but retain concepts by building your critical thinking skills through problem solving, not memorization. Right now, you can try Brilliant for free for 30 days by visiting brilliant.org/filmspeak or by clicking the link in the description of this video. Give learning a trial run. Do it, as well as receiving 20% off an annual subscription. Again, that's brilliant.org/filmspeak or click the link in the description below. And thank you so much to Brilliant, as always, for being an amazing sponsor of this video. Let's start where Josh Cooley wants to start. The beginning. Back before Transformers ventured the Earth, the real beginning. In Michael Bay's Transformers, we get an exposition dump and we just take the broad strokes of the property for granted. There's a cube that is very powerful and there are two opposing factions, the Autobots and Decepticons, warring for control. The issue here is that beyond good and evil, leader and followers, there's little effort made to distinguish these machines from each other or root the story in a relatable conflict in a way that truly invests an audience. With Transformers 1, the first priority is meaningful table setting so that by the time we reach the expected thrills of the franchise, we're invested enough to care about the outcome for each individual. And what better way to invest in the individual than in a story about labor? Yeah, you heard that right. Not since Monsters, Inc. has an animated film so handedly taken on Marxist alienation and exploitative labor practice. This, Transformers 1, is a pro-union film, which fucking rules because of, all the really exploitative practices that have been going on in this industry for a while. This is honestly incredible. I love seeing this. In Transformers 1, we are treated to a Cybertron with a ruling class and an army of miners below their boots laboring away to produce energon to power their world. To cast it in fittingly robotic terms, the citizens are cogs in a machine without basic sentient rights. Some take this for granted and others wonder if there's a better world that serves the interests not only of the ruling class, but the workers as well. The society is broken down into transformers and miners. The aforementioned can, transform and occupy a higher status in society. Meanwhile, the miners are merely bipedal robots with a single trade function. This dichotomy makes for a genuinely interesting social context in which to situate the ensemble. We very quickly understand the world these characters occupy and understand their basic needs and sense of injustice. Amazing what a little world building can do in opening up a whole other commentary that was perhaps there from the beginning but given new meaning here. As I mentioned earlier, this is X-Men First Class with Transformers. By taking this approach, we're not only granted the opportunity to learn about Optimus Prime, the individual, and the things that make him an effective and inspiring leader, we're granted the same for Megatron. There's only so much satisfaction one can glean from a story where the bad guy is bad simply because basic cinematic conflict requires an antagonist. We need to understand the arc and justification of their ideals. In a best case scenario, we can empathize with their values and disillusionment, ultimately siding with the protagonist only because their approach seeks to minimize the collateral damage to innocence. And Transformers 1 nails that. We're shown in Optimus Prime and Megatron both reacting to the same injustice, but driven to polar solutions. In a story like this, you might expect for the good guy to be a diligent follower of the rules and the bad guy to be a rebel, but Transformers 1 is not interested in such obvious characterization. Orion Pax, or Optimus Prime as he'll later become, is a rebel, though generous of spirit. He's skeptical of leadership and process and feels limited by the lot he's been handed in life. It is clear to him that many of the rules that govern them come at the expense of their personhood, or, bothood, I guess. When we're introduced to him at the beginning of the film, he's breaking into an official archive to learn more about the Primes. What follows is an exciting chase where he narrowly evades capture when he fortunately runs into his best friend, D16, who will eventually become Megatron, who helps him escape. D16 is not thrilled by the attention Pax draws to the two otherwise ordinary miners, and this neatly establishes their dichotomy from the jump. Pax isn't hurting anyone, but he's certainly not interested in blindly following the rules. He has hope, which gives him an edge, and it is this hope that eventually inspires the rest of the Autobots. The thing I find so cool about this interpretation of Optimus Prime is that it refutes the traditional idea of him being a straight and narrow, vaguely egotistical military leader. The war criminal who executed a pleading Leonard Nimoy from behind after surrendering, ripped the face off the Fallen while screaming, "Give me your faith," and ripped Megatron's spine out from his body, fucking Predator style, after the two had a semi-truce. Hey, look, I like the Bay films, but even I gotta admit, that's fucking psychotic behavior. Seeing Optimus as a grunt who has lived through hard labor at the beck and call of more powerful, if illegitimate leaders, gives him more credibility as a robot thrust into a position of authority, less through a desire for power and more out of necessity. His lifelong critical relationship with leadership figures is what informs his own eventual ruling philosophy. When Bay's Optimus is in mortal danger, it's hard to register an emotional response beyond the utility of, "Oh no, the leader of the good guys is in danger. This does not bode well for the large-scale binary conflict." Again, this isn't inherently bad, but it's leaving opportunity on the table. This version is a lot more compelling. In contrast to Pax, D16 is a follower of rules who believes in the system to such a degree that its eventual unraveling shatters him. D is a slave to the system, the mind, believing that it has the worker's best interests in mind, and that if he works hard enough, he'll be promoted and change his circumstances through the formal channels. When Pax suggests they participate in a race designated only for a higher class of robot, D16 has no interest and only participates after Pax tricks him into it. His unflappable adherence to the rules would be an excellent characteristic within a just system, but no system is just, and this only sets him up for failure. Opposite Pax and D16 is the perfect antagonist in Sentinel Prime. We are introduced to Sentinel as the somewhat egotistical, though not evil, leader of Cybertron. He's responsible for the social hierarchies that relegate Pax and D16 to the mines where they work. He ascended to leadership after cementing himself a war hero for fighting off a quintessent invasion and decides when robots receive their cogs, the key piece that goes in a chest socket and enables the power of transformation. He's playing God. God. However, through their journey, Pax and D16 learn that Sentinel is not a Prime and is actually a puppet leader, a tool of the Quintessence supplying them with the energon mined by Cybertron's working population. Cybertron had power and resources all along to sustain itself, but Sentinel saw the opportunity for power and was willing to oppress literally everyone else to pay off his blood debt. Perhaps most nefariously, we learn that the Transformer minor distinction was actually manufactured by Sentinel to oppress the laboring class. Pax and D16 believe that they have to earn the power to transform, but what we learn is that Sentinel has actually taken it from them. While this is a gutting realization for Pax, he has already realized that what makes a Transformer is not the literal cog that gives them their power, but the spark within that aspires to a better world. In short, his optimism. This realization galvanizes both Pax and D16, but in opposite directions. For Pax, it's an issue that can be corrected by dethroning Sentinel Prime and restoring power to the people of Cybertron while functioning as an appointed ruler. For D16, it completely disassembles his worldview. If this is what a leader is capable of, he'll never be subservient again. However, his need to rule is born of greed and anger that transforms his body into a weapon, redirecting his pain as violence. The only solution he can see is the death of Sentinel Prime. The irony then is that Megatron, of the entire ensemble, is the most like Sentinel. He's someone who resents their place within the system and how those in power do nothing to change the status quo, and so decides to take power for himself because he's the only one he can trust to make use of that power. It's a cycle he can't see clearly enough to break it. The line that Transformers 1 draws is ultimately much more interesting and nuanced than a simple good versus evil. It posits a conflict between hope and optimism and fear and pragmatism. D16 followed the rules and stayed in line, only to learn that the rule-making bodies were corrupt and could not be trusted. Rather than acknowledging the possibility of a bad egg and a bright future, he resolves to reject any leadership that could possibly break down and exploit its subjects, driving him to become the very thing he rejects. Megatron has never been this layered and nuanced and interesting in any iteration of Transformers, and I really gotta shout out Josh Cooley for giving this character something meaty, for making him the highlight of the film. Optimus, on the other hand, sees the dark reality of the world as it has been, but believes in what it could be. Just because the system is broken doesn't mean that we can't build a better one. As you can see, this may be a kid's film, but it never sacrifices its integrity for the sake of dumbing itself down. It respects an audience of all ages and is much stronger for it. In addition to its central characters, Transformers 1 does an admirable job of balancing and developing its ensemble. In addition to Optimus and Megatron, RC and B are given significantly more dimension than ever before. RC is shown to be more capable than Prime and in a position of power when we find her, but that power is fragile, and especially given the fact that she's a woman, is easily discredited by her superiors, as we see in the film. She tries to hold on to what she has, which is why she adheres strictly to protocol. But because she, kinda like Megatron but less delusional, believes that her ability will eventually grant her the freedom and respect she wants. After spending time with Optimus and initially skeptical of what she perceives to be a foolish streak of rebellion, she comes to realize that maybe the only way to actualize her life is to take back the power for the collective. Their dynamic does a great job of demonstrating one of Optimus's best character traits in this film: the ability to surround himself with people whose talents and abilities he respects and knows how to utilize in service of a greater good. He is a natural leader because of how he pulls the spark that exists within every Autobot out of them. He even tries to do the same with Megatron, but it doesn't work out naturally. Whereas Megatron sees power in cogs, in machinery, Optimus sees power in intention and connection. Another brilliant choice the film makes is making the Decepticons Sentinel's former high guard. They're largely useless cowards until someone with a drive and purpose enters the picture in Megatron. They are nothing more than directionless soldiers who oppose the current regime, but who don't know how to fight back. They simply work from the shadows, take what they need, and then retreat. The only thing they believe in, which becomes Megatron's mantra, is the strength of one bot over another. On a lighter note, Bumblebee is a delight in this film. He's the golden retriever of the ensemble. Initially, he's just happy to have friends, but as he builds confidence and power within the group, he's so excited by every advance that you can't help but smile. I mean, it's a character that could be very annoying and grating on the surface, but his personality adds an interesting dynamic to the group. Now, while I clearly love this film and I think it's genuinely fantastic, I mean, it's got a couple issues, right? Like, I wish the introductory narration was a separate prologue because it would give us more time to have the realization that Pax is going to eventually become Optimus Prime. If you delay this realization a bit further, you can spend more time treating him as a Han Solo, Aladdin type like we see in the introduction. Instead, his endgame becomes a foregone conclusion. Similarly, with Megatron, it might have been more effective for him to discover the truth of Sentinel Prime on his own to make that beat feel more effective. Granted, it's a hard balance to strike. We know where things are going to end. But I digress. Look, that's me waxing poetic about an animated Transformers film for like 20 minutes or so. Am I taking this a little too seriously? Maybe, but it's undeniably refreshing to see such a thoughtful approach to a property that I couldn't blame you for thinking had gone stale. It's rare that a film for kids is given such careful consideration at a script level, and we should be supporting films that will encourage studios to stop dumbing these franchises down. I want to see more of Josh Cooley's vision for the Transformers, and the only way to do that is if we support the film by buying a ticket or renting it on VOD. Trust me, for the first time in a long time, a Transformers film is more than meets the eye.